Welcome ESO community to my official Werewolf PvP guide. This is part 1 and it is about how to properly build a werewolf toon for PvP. Now, it's a heavy armor focused guide. Medium armor doesn't do well at all on a werewolf in PvP unless you're running around with a low buff, but other than that we're talking about a mid-max build, not some power buffed cheese, right? But other than that, we're gonna go over what type of balances you need, like what resources is the most important for overall in PvP on a werewolf, which morph and skills, which classes and stuff like that, and traits, potions and all that, and champion points as well. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get into the werewolf skill line and kind of show y'all like what morphs I should actually use for PvP, and in what certain situations what morph would be better. Alright, so anyway, you have two different types of PvP. Well, probably three different types, but the main two. 1v1s, which is dueling, and then open world. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and go over the skills first, and then I'll explain the other stuff. Alright, so, you have three morphs of the werewolf. You have the regular brown one, which is just the beginner you get. As soon as you get infected with lycanthropy and do the skill line, this is the first morph that you will get. You will need to level this in dungeons, XP, grinding, anything like that. But anyway, you have two morphs to pick from. They're both very effective, they're both very good. But one definitely comes out on top more so than the other on a basic werewolf build. Now, here's the catch. One does bleed and splash attacks, or AoE cone effects. And one just gives you more mitigation and little small weapon damage buff and longer timer, especially when that's going to be fixed with this upcoming patch. Anyway, which morph would you want to recommend for a beginner werewolf? Well, or for advanced players or someone who's just getting into it but never really played werewolf before. I would go with the pack leader just because of the mitigation. The mitigation you get and the increased time with the dire wolves will proc your Call of the Pack passive, which is this one all the way down here, which will give you the cost to reduce the cost of remaining in your werewolf transformation by 20% for each transformed werewolf or dire wolf in your group, including yourself, up to a maximum of 80%. Long time ago this was actually bugged and all, you could have just had 4 wolves in one group and you just basically had an infinite timer, but they fixed that a few good amount of patches ago. But at one point this was very, very powerful, but they kind of made it even better for soloing werewolves with the new pack leader effect. How now the dire wolves will also kind of be considered werewolves, or at least get the Call of the Pack passive to proc. Alright. So like I said, the pack leader is the beginner morph to use. Now, where would you use Berserker? If you're a little more advanced, and obviously if you had a more of like a bleed or a dot build, Berserker is the way to go. Augment your light attacks to gain a bleed, and your heavy attack deals damage in a cone in front of you. That's pretty much all it does, and it's a black werewolf versus a white werewolf, so white pelt versus black pelt. Alright, so now we're going to go over the active abilities. Which one would I recommend for PvP? Any of these morphs right here is effective, but the one that I kind of been intending to go to more so is Brutal Pounce. Just because it gives you extra damage. It stacks up, which you can see when you basically pounce on a target, or you pounce on a target 6 times, or you pounce on 6 targets at once, you can activate the Brutal Carnage effect. And then you'll get up to 600 weapon damage. And then also, if they're below a certain percent of health, you will do more bleed damage to them, or like an execute, but not reliable, but the 600 damage part is. Feral Pounce, the timer used to be like 4 seconds, now it's 1 second. I think it's really good if you want to kind of maintain your transformation or longer fights, but you necessarily don't need to do that once the pack leader passive is fixed. But either morph works. My favorite though right now is Brutal, just because it's just, that damage is so important. Now for your base heal. Now this heal scales off of max health, and it crits off a weapon damage crit, weapon crit, not spell crit anymore, but then it costs Magicka, which is pretty expensive. That's why I prefer to play a stamina sword wolf. Right after that is Necromancer, and then third is Templar, just because of the passives. Templar has a reduction passive and a low weapon damage increase. The Necro has bleeds and a healing passive and extra health, so therefore you get more health, or stronger heals, I would say, so that incorrectly. Now for the two morphs, which one would I recommend for PvP? Hircine's Rage. Okay, this one is kind of tricky and it's high risk, high reward, high risk, right? Or high risk, high reward. So you have to be at full health. Then you have to activate the heal to get the major berserk. But here's the downside: it only lasts 6 seconds, and you basically have a weaker heal, and you take more damage. Honestly, I would just not run this in PvP. It's just too dangerous. Some people just hit way too hard, stuff like that. But anyway, if you also have any of your werewolf heals, you know, slotted, you gain major brutality at all times. Only when you're in werewolf form, stuff like that. But Hircine's Rage is not really recommended. You probably can run it on a glass cannon, maybe, because I've done it and it's pretty dangerous. But like I said, you can't survive with it. Now Hircine's Fortitude, this one is just the better one for PvP. The survivability and the recovery and the stamina recovery that you receive from this is just superior to the Hircine's Rage in PvP. Not even a comparison. Increases the healing done, increase your health and stamina recovery by a small amount of the healing caused. So what does this mean? Basically, the more healing you do, right, or the healing done, it kind of starts scaling your stamina and health recovery pretty high, which is insane, especially if you're running really good armor sets designed to keep you alive and have high recoveries stacked with that, and your recoveries will just be shooting to the roof. But make sure you do have a very effective healing as well. But for PvP, Hircine's Fortitude is the way to go for both werewolf morphs, Pack Leader or Berserker. Now, the Fear, the Roar, basically. It's kind of like an AoE. It's kind of very small range now. It used to be bigger, but the area of effect is smaller. So it's a lot harder to get this off, especially on fast-moving targets that can get in and out. So you got to kind of use this wisely. But while slotted, you gain dance and stuff like that. Weapon crit all around. Anyway, the two morphs. Deafening Roar versus Ferocious. One increases your heavy attack speed, and the other just puts Fracture, and then it also gives you Maim. It's kind of quite obvious which morph to use for PvP. Deafening Roar, hands down, is the better morph right now. Ferocious Roar seems to have a problem. When you fear a target the first time, the heavy is slow. It's only the second heavy attack that speeds up. So it's not that reliable for the fear heavy howl combos. It's just not. Maybe on that second target you run up across will be, but on the first target, the first heavy will just be super slow at normal speed, so it's not even worth using. But you can if you want. But Deafening Roar, hands down, the better one. You basically reduce somebody's resistance, therefore you do more damage to them. And you put minor maim, therefore they will be doing less damage to you by 15%. Deafening Roar is the better morph for PvP on a werewolf. Piercing Howl. You have two morphs. If you're in a group, you can run Howl of Despair. But if you're small scale, or you don't want to run the synergy, Howl of Agony is the better one. Just too much damage with it and stuff like that. When you fear a target, you basically hit them with a very, very, very powerful howl, which does 22% damage, but I think that scales with 25%. I don't know, I think it's being weird right now. But yeah, Howl of Agony is the main morph for PvP, solo and group based. Despair is okay. It's only good for the groups, but by yourself, it's garbage. Now, the Infectious Claws. This is basically your dot over time ability that you can spam. It's spammable, and it's an AoE effect as well. You have two morphs. You have Claws of Anguish and Claws of Life. I feel like Claws of Anguish is the better one for PvP because you have to keep your defile on your target and you have to stop them from healing. If you can't do that, then you'll never kill them unless they're just super squishy. But if they're really tanky with powerful heals and good recoveries, you'll never kill them with Claws of Life. Yes, you'll heal more and maybe proc Troll King if you're running it, but or any monster sets that proc healing effects based off a heal. That's probably only where it's good. It's probably really good in Imperial City though, when there's a bunch of ads like NPCs, because that 114% will be affected on those half now, 60%, 60% less now. But Claws of Anguish is the better one. It puts major and minor defile. The disease effect gets put on gets put on every race except Argonians. That's why you have to run armor sets that already apply minor defile if you want to kill them. But Argonians are very rare anyway. You don't really see them. They're usually tanks and healers and stuff like that. So, and every once in a while some DPS and mag tunes will use them, but not reliable. Claws of Life puts the disease effect as well. Like I said, if you run up against someone who's just super healing based, and then they're tanky, it's not going to do anything. You could get away and get lucky, but not that reliable. So Claws of Anguish is the better one for PvP. The passives, you want to make sure you get everything. Pursuit, this is really, Synergize is very good with the heavy armor passive. That's why I said heavy armor is better for Werewolf and PvP above the level 50 cap, because you know there's people that play below 50 that have CP points that abuse certain buffs, but we're not talking about them. We're talking about mid-maxing Werewolf builds. Blood Rage, you need this when you attack a target. It basically keeps you in form longer, so as long as you're attacking, you're basically gonna be in Werewolf for a while. Savage Strength, this gives you resistance and it gives you weapon damage. Blood Moon, it just bites people, and I already said what Call of the Pack was earlier. I'm not gonna go over that again. But anyway, like I said, Pack Lead is probably the best for beginners. So alright, so what type of classes what type of races and classes? Well, let's go over to class first. So I chose Stamsork. Stamsork is just overall the best werewolf class possible in the werewolf form, not outside of werewolf form, because it's kind of hard to survive on a Stamsork. You got to be fast and very mobile and have good recoveries on a Stamsork to stay alive and not get bursted down or dotted down. But here's one of the main reasons why this is one of the best classes for werewolf, or at least in the form. So you have a passive here that basically increases your mag recovery by 10%. Good, that's good for werewolf because it increases your mag sustain, which is very important. It's one of the main weaknesses of a werewolf. Energized here, this increases your physical and shock damage. So if you have a shock glyph on your werewolf, you will do more damage if you're a Stamsork, and you also will be doing 5% more physical damage. Amplitude is very good against tanky players. That's why Stamsork werewolves are really good at bursting some of them guys down. And that's it. This is only good outside of werewolf, unfortunately. And you have one more. I think this is known as Power Stone. It reduces your ultimate cost by 15%. Therefore, you get your werewolf a little bit quicker. And then you have, let's see, Unholy Knowledge. It reduces the cost of your abilities by 6%. Magicka, Health, and Stamina, which is werewolf is very cost heavy. Sustain isn't too good on werewolf. That's why you have to build it in to make it effective. The damage is there. You just got to build in the sustain. Persistent. Okay, so this is a really interesting one. So after you block an attack, your abilities will legitimately cost 15% less, but you have to block an attack to get this effect. Werewolf, Stamsork Werewolf has the most passives. So for any beginner werewolf or any werewolf players that want to try something effective, then Stamsork is the best class for that. So what about races? I prefer Orc because it gives you max stamina. You heal when you deal damage with a weapon ability. I don't know if this goes over in Werewolf or not. I think it does. And it also increases your max health by 1,000. And then you have the weapon damage, which therefore will increase your physical damage. And same thing as max stamina, but max stamina will also allow you to block, roll, dodge, and fear, and use more stamina abilities. And reduce the cost of your sprint by 12%, therefore meaning you can run longer and you have movement speed, so therefore you can kind of stay on your target quicker. Orc is the best race, just the best race for a werewolf all around. Now you can play other races if you want. If you feel like you don't care for the orc or it's not your taste, go for it. My second and third position, second one would be Imperial, third one would be Dark Elf. Those are my top 3 races, but any race that has stamina would be your best bet. But those are my top 3. Orc, Imperial, and Dark Elf. Okay, so the other classes you can play as would be a Necromancer and a Templar. I went over that earlier as well. I said it a few times. Necros have healing and dot passives and health, and the Templar has reduction in damage and spell resistance. And then I would say also Dragon Knight, because it's really good when you use the Battle War passives. You can get all your resources, so you could be really effective. But Stamsork is top tier. Now, for your human side to get into werewolf form, you need to have you got to be very tanky. You got to have good heals, and you got to be fast, especially on a Stamsork. And Heroic Slash is my go-to. Now, what about on character sheet? What is the most effective stat for a werewolf, and what about attributes? Well, max stamina, hands down, is where you want to put your attributes, because all your abilities scale off of max stamina, and that's where your damage, roll, dodge, and blocking, and break free comes from. So, that's where you want to put your attributes. Your physical and spell resistance does matter in werewolf. You need to kind of get that really high, not too high, but at least effective enough to offset a lot of damage. Now, if you look to the right side of there, you have magic recovery, health recovery, and stamina recovery. All of this, the build that I'm using, is probably my favorite build right now, just because how effective it is. And when you're in werewolf form and you're using Hercian's Fortitude, and you're constantly healing, your health and your stamina recovery will just shoot up, because Fortitude is just amazing sustained morph. And also, I forgot to say, when you heal yourself at full health, you get more stamina as well. You get like an extra 2-3k stamina when you heal at full health. Very, very powerful. And at least in the stamina health department. Your mag recovery needs to come from either from glyphs or from armor sets, or just potions. Oh, that's another thing I need to go over with you guys. Food. Bewitch Sugar Skulls is probably the best for werewolf, because the health recovery and the max mag and max stam. If you don't have those, just get normal tri-stats. Tri-stats and Sugar Skulls are the best foods for werewolf. Now potions. Mag potions, detect pots, tripods, immovables, and speed. Tripods is probably the best all around. And then detect pots for chasing night blades if they get annoying. And every once in a while you use an invis pot, which is pretty funny. But you want to be able to keep maintaining your mag, but you also want to try to maintain when it gets heavy combat, like 1vxing or out in the open world. That's when tri-stats is probably the most important. You want to be able to stay alive, because there's some dudes in this game that will just burst you down from full health to 0 in a matter of seconds if you are not ready to adjust before you just get destroyed. Especially in some situations when you get a bunch of people jump on you at once, like free and heal and get the heck out of there and pop a potion or something and get out of there before you just get bursted. There's been times where when the game lags or I'm just not paying attention, I will get killed, even on the most tankiest builds if there's that many people on you. So you got to be able to keep your stuff up. Now let's get back to the character sheet. Recoveries are very, 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 very important. So werewolf, like I said, is very cost heavy on sustain. So keep your recoveries up. If your recoveries are at least above 1,000, you'll be doing pretty well with your sustain department. Now damage. Damage is also very important. You don't want to be in a situation where you just cannot kill the guy. That sucks. So make sure you have a good high stam pool, and you don't always need to, depending on your opponent, you might be able to wear them down. If they don't have good enough sustain like you, you'll eventually catch them. But, you know, most of the time, if you want to be able to just, you know, get it over with, you need to build in some damage and penetration. Pen, max stamina, and damage all matters. Now, for Mundus Stones, I am running the Steed. Quicker movement speed and higher health recovery. I can keep on pushing, keep on fighting. My health will constantly be shooting up. That's probably one of the best Mundus Stones right now on a werewolf. It's just really, really good. If you don't want to run that, you can run the Acronaut. I think that's the mag recovery. You can run the Warrior, Lover, Tower. Any of them that you want that actually applies to werewolf. So, yeah. But mine right now is the Steed for this particular build. But anyway, if you look at the bottom part of the screen, you see where it says name, carried by werewolf. Yep. I put that name in here. It's for some giggles, man, because I think it's funny every time every once in a while I get a message saying carried by werewolf or werewolf carry. Yeah, I'll admit it. I'm carried by werewolf because it's all I play and that's all I'm used to. So, who cares? So what? It's just a game. You're carried by something in your build. So what? Werewolf is fun. And a lot of people who never played werewolf before messaged me and said, "Hey, man, this is actually fun." And they never thought it because they're just, you know, they probably heard from other people, "Oh man, it's not fun, dude. It's a carry." No, it's just obviously it's subjective. It's just up to you. But anyway, like I was saying, you need to go ahead and look at the recoveries. Make sure your recoveries are high enough, and make sure that your damage is there too. All right, so I'll be going over champion points now. Where would you want to have your champion points? So this is where it really matters. So you have a damage format, but really what you want to do is well balance it much as possible. So for example, what I'm going to do real quick is show you my CP on this build, and then I'll kind of go over some armor sets for you guys to kind of figure out how to build it properly. But like I said, heavy armor is the best for werewolf, hands down. Alright, so this is my CP, 43, 32, not a lot into penetration, but I'm also running major fracture, so that would be good enough. I'm on 7k to 8k pen, so yeah, I'm good on that. 43 mighty to increase your damage done. Exploiter, you need this as a world because you do a lot of off balance. You need perfect strike to also increase your weapon critical. I didn't really need last stand because of the stamp sort, but if you want, you can kind of flip this around and get that if you need to get proc major heroism to get your ultimate a little faster if you're new with a werewolf. An opportunist, but this crap barely works, so it's usually when you bash like a stamp sork or something, or a mag sork using their little ability, or someone who's reviving. 61 master at arms to increase your direct attacks like howls, pounce, infectious claws, stuff like that. Physical weapon expert to increase your light and heavy attacks as a werewolf. This is very important. You don't want to have this too low. If you do have it low, make sure you have enough damage to kind of keep it up. Tactician, most important, because defenses as a werewolf is roll dodging and blocking, and your survivability, with your sustain with your mag, and your heal, and your health recovery, and your stam recovery too. You got to be able to keep your stam up. Now, here, how do you kill somebody as a werewolf? You need to make sure that you have your combos. Werewolf is more about combinations than it is just straight up weapon damage. So, combinating and combos as well will allow you to put somebody down more efficiently and effectively as a werewolf than just having straight damage. Yes, you will kill somebody, but what happens when you run out of resources? Therefore, you gotta wind up a heavy attack or a fear and land it to get your stand back. So if you have enough recoveries, you can just kind of spam a bunch of howls and combinations until you kind of really do run low. You can potion, or then you do your fear heavy howl stuff for sustain or whatever, or damage. Now I put 75 blessed. This increases my healing because, you know, healing all around has been nerfed, and it's really cool here what blessed does on 75 blessed. It basically gives you a free heal when you proc a potion, so it's basically a free heal. This is probably the best balanced world build I got, and the survivability is insane. It's like super keep on fighting type build until you just get swarmed where you're not going to be able to survive at all anyway. 28 tumbling. You want to do befoul, but since this is more of a sustain build, And overall balanced, you don't need it. Just 28 tumbling. If you want to put Befell, put like 50 something in here, 50 to 70 something, to kind of increase that, healing reduction. If you want to shut somebody from healing, especially if that's what they rely on to stay alive, is just healing alone, then yeah, do that route. 43 tenacity. This is the lowest I would go on a heavy attack. 64 Arcanus to increase your mag recovery, stamina recovery 56 Mooncalf, and then same thing for healthy, because remember, Werewolf is very cost heavy on sustain. You need as much recoveries as possible. When running, to definitely increase your movement speed, and if you look right there, increase your health, magic, and recovery by 10% while sprinting, and that's really good because therefore it increases your recoveries. So, Warlord, this is your break free, doesn't need to be too high. The highest I'll go is probably like 44 or 40 or something like that, but 23 is about where you need to be. 64 into quick recovery. Once again, you need to be able to keep your heals up, so that's where I would go. Lowest I would go would probably be 32, wouldn't go any lower than that. 43 hardy, the highest I would go on this is 64 or 75, probably 64. Same thing with elemental. This is to basically reduce incoming poison damage. If you want to fix this up so you get unchained, so you can kind of use your next end ability to be free almost, then go that route. Critical leech is very important. You kind of need this, and you need spell absorption, because when what this does, it basically you restore free magic. Really good. And then what hardy does is basically reduces your incoming damage from physical and poison, and Werewolf takes a lot of damage from poison, especially if they're just a stand DK that utilizes a bunch of dots. So hardy is your best route there. And this just basically reduces fire, flame, shock, your typical magic damages, stuff like that. And then 34 thick skin just reduce your damage over time from all abilities. So you want to make sure your crit resistance is pretty high too, because people still use critical builds, so do 31 crit resistance. Now 61 Ironclad. The highest I would go on that is 81, the lowest I would go is probably 61. That's it. Alright, so that's basically your CP. You want to make sure you well balance it out, stuff like that. And you can do some precise strikes or thaumaturge if you want to do dot damages, but my build's not a dot build, so I don't do any of that. I just kind of go for more of the direct abilities. But other than that, yeah, this is how you set up your champion points for a werewolf, or for a well-balanced PvP werewolf. For PvE, completely different. You want to just do straight damage. With PvP, you need to be heavy armor and sustain like crazy. Now let me go ahead and just go over armor sets real quick. This is a build that I was going to release. It's probably one of the strongest werewolf builds I have, or actually, matter of fact, it's probably the best werewolf build I got that can just survive like crazy. Now, granted, I have it on the Stamsork because Stamsork is the best werewolf class in the werewolf form itself. Desert Rose, guys, it gives you a bunch of magicka. It's a really good sustain. It's actually changed a little bit. I think the magic is going to go down to 2,000, but the proc chance is going to be way higher. So, yeah, it's kind of a buff, but a nerf at the same time. Desert Rose is a go-to armor set. Now for traits, Nerdhold, Sharpened, and stuff like that. You can run double dot poisons, but I always go for like increased weapon damage and spell damage. But you need the weapon damage glyph on your one-hander. You can do dual wield or two-hander, but one-handed shield for me is best for werewolf people like that, because you get more resources and you're tankier because of the shield. So I'm just kind of showing y'all what I'm running. Asylum Greatsword, this is a no-brainer for most werewolf players if they're smart enough and they know this. Run the Asylum to get quicker ultimate. Run up to a group of enemies and just, execute and sustain. Engine Guardian, one of the best sustain monster sets in the game. It's crazy. You can run this with Troll King with this build. But always make sure you run M-Pen on every piece. I don't care what people say with the new changes. M-Pens, you still need crit resistance in PvP. Or you can run Troll King. Eternal Vigor, this is probably the best sustain set on a werewolf, so go with Vigor, guys. Just the recoveries are insane, especially when you drop below 50%. Your health recovery just shoots up like a Troll King proc itself. So it's kind of built in Troll King with Engine Guardian, so you're good there. You never run out of Magicka when you have a bunch of people on top of you. Normally the way you die is if they all ult you at once and you're not fast enough to react. For jewelry, just run Triune, but I have an infused piece and I got that Tri recovery glyph. Really powerful, therefore it will boost up my recoveries a little further. Keep it pushing, you know, keep your energy moving, keep yourself alive. It's better to stay alive than dead. Alright guys, so this is basically how you build a werewolf. Now I was going to show one more thing about the heavy armor passives, why it's better than medium. Let me go ahead and show you. So Resolve gives you resistances. Constitution, it gives you health recovery, and you restore stamina and Magicka basically when you take damage. Juggernaut gives you more health based on how much heavy armor pieces you have. That's why it might just be best to run all 5 heavy, because your healing scales off your max HP. And this right here, Revitalize, increases the Magicka or stamina your heavy attacks restore by 25%. This is your sustain on your werewolf at your heavy attacks. And Rapid Mending will give you more healing. Medium. All medium does is it gives you weapon critical, stamina recoveries, movement speed, and for PvP you need sustain. Alright guys, so this is the werewolf guide for PvP, or at least how to build a werewolf. And then you can kind of design your build any way you want, just with heavy armor. I'm just trying to show you guys recoveries are probably the best, sustain and stance is the best class, and orc is the best race. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the little part 1 of this. My next video will be a dueling tips and open world tips on what to do as a werewolf. Alright guys, peace.